All right, folks, welcome back. This is episode 4, Classtime. And where we left off was 1651 with the Navigation Act, basically telling the colonies they could not sell directly to the customer. This is the idea, basically, of a middleman telling everyone that they are the only ones to be able to buy and sell everything. Imagine if you are writing a book and there's a law that says you may not self-publish. If you look on Amazon or any other website, really, you'll find countless self-published books. And these are not generally priced as high as other books. For example, one of the books that I'm using, Everything You Need to Know About American History in One Big Book, this is actually published by a company, by Workman. So everything that went into making this book is benefiting a publishing company as well as the people who put the information together. Now imagine if you are writing that book. You've spent years studying American history and you go to compile and make this book available to the public, and the government says, no, you must find a publishing house. That publishing house is going to control what goes into the book. They can make edits. They're going to control the price of the book. They're going to control where it can be sold. And they're going to control what you receive as remuneration for your book. If you self-publish, all you have to do is find a printing company that you agree with their price on. They will print and bind the book, sell them to you, and you then sell them to the reader. But with the Navigation Act, with that law, you're required to let a publishing company do all that. You're basically required to let someone else who had no part in the work you did profit from it. That's why smuggling became a thing. That's where this new identity that we discussed at the end of the last video began. When England told the colonies, only English companies may sell your goods, that was English royalty basically saying, you're not English anymore. You are a colony. You're not in England. That new idea, that new identity is we are Americans. And this is where people begin to realize the differences between basically the UK at the time, Great Britain, and the Americas. In Britain at the time, in the 1600s, so you're dealing with the 17th century, royalty is still very much in charge of the government. The king is still the one raising an army, still commanding the army, still levying taxes, still very much able to just issue laws. It was beginning to annoy people even there, and we'll get to that in a moment. But in the U.S., government style was very different. We discussed this in the different types of colonies, from chartered to limited government to whatever it was. And they started realizing the vast differences. In the U.S. now, or in the colonies, there was not just the ruling class and the ruled. There was now a growing middle class. Because you see, in England, if you wanted to become a hatter, or a cobbler, a farmer, or a baker, or a tailor, you had to go through years and years and years of training, and ultimately you still were an employee of someone. You were still a tailor to a lord. And people were starting not to like that. In the Americas, if you became a tailor, anyone and everyone around could come to you to have clothing made or repaired or whatnot. People have started to realize that. And that is growing the middle class, where you can set up shop as a tailor or a baker or a butcher or own a boat and become a fisherman, raise livestock and become a farmer and rancher. And you can make your own way. That's the rising middle class. The social mobility is greatly powered by the fact that there is an abundance of land. When you have cities like London or Edinburgh, Manchester, Liverpool, any number of those, by even this point in the mid-1600s, there was nowhere for you to build a new shop. There was nowhere to build a new pub. It was very much a crowded, very dense landscape. If you wanted to venture out and start a new city and build it, you had to be enormously wealthy. You basically had to be nobility. But in the U.S., I defaulted that. In the colonies, people are beginning to move south already at this point. Very shortly after the arrival of the Quakers and the others that had come in through Plymouth, they're already starting to move south. We're seeing cities grow as people are chopping down trees and building homes, or they're chopping down trees and building pubs, or what would become hotels, what would become a business. And the cities are rising up, and people are able to build their own thing. This idea, this social mobility, where I can take my life into my own hands. I don't have to go through the lord of the manor to beg him to let me use my skill to provide for my family. This is also powered by the new religious tolerance. As I said early on, the initial European exploration was very much powered by greed. Ferdinand and Isabella and other European rulers wanted new sources of gold or spices or any other number of things. Now, granted, yes, Ferdinand and Isabella chartered the voyage of Columbus, and they basically told him, find us a new route to the Far East. It's very much why we still have the West Indies. He thought he had arrived in the Far East. Ultimately, they did find that this was not the case. They had discovered a new continent. And there were new things there they had not seen, at least in the quantity that it could be grown. Sugar or tobacco or other things. They did find riches. They conquered peoples. And it was very much Spanish that did all this. It was not English and Spanish and Italian and. It was very much the Spanish conquistadors that conquered the lands. Eventually, yes, the French would explore in the Floridas and up into Louisiana. They also went into what is now Canada. The British primarily were coming into what would become the U.S., as we know, because they were the British colonies. But if you still lived in Europe, Protestants, non-Catholics, were oppressed to different levels depending on the country that they were in. Italy at the time was very much, if you're not Catholic, you're not welcome. Whereas in England, okay, you can be here, but you can't do everything the Catholics can. An example, up to about 1680s, 1690, Protestants could not keep and bear arms, but Catholics could. Or members of the Church of England, which was basically Catholicism light, because it was a Catholic church where you could get divorced. This new tolerance where you could be a Catholic or a Protestant or non-practicing, and you could still own a weapon to defend yourself and start a business to provide for your family, coupled with all of the other things, empowered via social mobility people to rise from a lifestyle where they grew a few crops, maybe raised up one cow a year to feed their families. And it let them grow. There was also a shared threat to the new colonies. You had the native peoples, you had the French, you had the Spanish, who were still trying to explore at this point, because they firmly still believed that the city of El Dorado, the city of gold, was located somewhere on this continent. It was a legend from the indigenous people, and the Spanish latched onto this. Ponce de Leon had his trek to find the Fountain of Youth. But beside that, it was the British colonies building the cities and building the ports and farming and doing business and everything else. But by 1689, the British had caught on to this too, and we have, under William and Mary, daughter of James II, the English Bill of Rights. It limited the king's ability to rule, basically. He could no longer just create a new court. It allowed Protestants to keep and bear arms, and it basically began the move to make the monarchy the figurehead it is now versus the ruler of the country. That, of course, is going to be known in the colonies, and they're going to be looking at this going, well, the English have rights. That means we have these rights. And the king is limited on what he can do to us as well. We know from the lens of history that ultimately this will not play out in that way completely, and where it leads us. Moving forward several more years, in the 1730s and 40s, we have the Great Awakening. Now, this is where Jonathan Edwards or George Whitefield, Massachusetts and England, respectively, lead a religious revival movement. Religion had basically grown laissez-faire, to use that term. People were moving away from it, and the Great Awakening under Edwards and Whitefield begins to move people back into the church. It is not single denominational by any means, because there are others that would pick up on this movement and decide they're going to spark a revival of their own denomination. But this is very much in the U.S., or in the colonies at the time, going to involve religious congregations that are not Church of England. These are going to be the Lutherans, and these are going to be other Protestant groups moving back into their churches that are completely anti-Church of England. This is going to further that division that we are Americans. We are not English anymore. At the same time, though, you have the Enlightenment with John Locke, the social contract. This is similar in the zeal and the verve and elan that Locke had, because in his mind, society has a contract between the governing and the governed. And very much he is going to be teaching that governments need to have rights as well. Now, of course, we know where all of this is going to end up, but we're not quite there yet. We're still in the 1740s, although the next 30 years is pretty much the same thing on repeat. You do have the fur trade, the battle for ports between England and France. This is going to push further and further west. People are going to be moving west to find more hunting. As they've built cities, of course, prey animals from rabbits to foxes, even wolves, are going to move away. Even predatory animals like wolves or mountain lions are going to realize they are not a predator to a much larger animal unless in packs, and they're not going to attack a city. Those that do, and even to this day, I tell this to all my friends, wolves or coyotes are not going to attack your home unless the pack is starving and the pack will attack in force. You have no choice then but to open fire. Or, if it's a lone wolf, he is literally hours from dropping dead starving, or he is sick. Again, no choice but to open fire. The push west is to find them where they're not in that state, so that one, they're healthy and have a better fur, and also more numerous. The battle for ports, of course, all about trade. France and England are not allies at this point. They're very antagonistic. They both want to lead the trade between the colonies in Europe. This is going to further that antagonism and aid the colonies come the revolution due to that antagonism between France and England. We did have in 1754 the Albany Plan. Now this would create a colonial militia. Unfortunately, it failed. It would have funded it, but there's no real teeth to it. Because, of course, in the colonies, the British are collecting the taxes. They're not going to hand that money back to create a militia in the colonies because they're going to say you don't need one. The year before, 1753, 21-year-old George Washington was sent to the Ohio River Valley to get the French to leave. Fortunately, that also would fail. The year later, 1754, the militia officer, George Washington, led an attack on Fort Necessity, attacking the French. And then from that point until 1763, you had the French and Indian War, and you have the 7 Years' War from 1756 to 1763. All of this is leading up. You see where it's going, because the colonists are realizing England doesn't care about us other than what they can get from us and then sell to enrich themselves. We're not getting paid fairly for our goods. We're not getting taxed proportionally. We're not getting represented in Parliament. The king is still very much ruling us, even though you had the British Bill of Rights, or English Bill of Rights, limiting his power over his subjects there. Couple this with the basically deaf ear as the colonists are attacked by the local native people, by French, by Spanish, who are trying to encroach on the colonies. Couple this with all of these things, and it leads directly to where we're going to pick up in the next video, Lexington and Concord. The colonists had already sent their grievances to the king, taxation without representation. They had already made it very clear that they were going to move away, and they're going to start governing themselves. The king didn't like this, sent his redcoats to the colonies to disarm the colonists. The shot heard round the world. We still don't know who actually fired it, although it is believed to have been one of the colonists, although there are those who believe the other way. This is Lexington and Concord. It's been memed for years, where you'll basically just see the two sides lining up. Give up your guns and be good little subjects. No. This is the precursor. This is the spark to the powder keg. And as I said, this is where we're going to pick up on the next time. This is where we truly get through all of the appetizers. Now we're to the main course. Now we're to American history, not just history, playing out in the Americas. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, but be civil. We're not here to scream and yell like toddlers. We're not here to insult people. We're here to discuss, dissent, and debate. We're here to look at this and say, I don't think that's right. I think this is right, and to have that debate. So please remember that and be civil. As always, remember to like and share to spread the channel, spread the message, widen the conversation, and affect the algorithm, and to subscribe and turn on notifications so you're aware of all content as it posts. These videos post at 10 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, U.S. Central Time, but as you have seen in the last couple of weeks, other videos do still post. You'll want notifications for those. And I am still doing the giveaway at 500, 1,000, and 1,500 subscribers. At 500, the winner will get one book, a choice of 1984, Brave New World, or Fahrenheit 451. At 1,000, the winner will get a choice of two of those. At 1,500, the winner gets all three. You'll want to be a subscriber to be part of that. Until next time, everyone have a wonderful day.